Finally, it was a time when I could take my Christmas sweater and start decorating my home for Christmas. But when I took the box with ornaments, I realized that all my decorations were very simple. So, as a creative person, I went to Pinterest to get some ideas. There were so many ideas that I decided to recreate the best ones and show you what I got. For the first ornaments, I used air dry clay, and it was my first time working with it. I started working on plastic wrap, but as you can see, it didn't work at all. So I just put everything on the table and it washed off easily, so don't worry. I took 2 books of the same thickness, so when I rolled the clay, it was the same thickness everywhere. For the shape, I used cookie cutters with different Christmas shapes, like a tree, a small house, a star. I just pressed them into the clay, removed the extra clay and got nice clean shapes. But the shape still didn't look perfect, so I wet my brush with water and smoothed the surface and the edges. Then I took a small metal hook, or as Google calls it, an eye screw, and put it into the top. So I did the same with each piece of clay. I rolled it out, pressed the shape and got the form. Sometimes things are really not perfect and you will see a lot of that in this video. This one turned out very uneven. I tried to smooth it, but it didn't work. I just used a small stick to make like a tree texture. The process of making clay ornaments was very enjoyable. I even tried different ways. For example, here I tried using plastic wrap and pressing the clay through it. I saw other people do this and I was curious about the difference, and the cookie turned out smoother and looks more like a real cookie. I also tried to make a clay cookie using a paper template that I printed before, and oh my god, it was very hard. It turned out very uneven. I tried to fix it as much as I could, but I think it wasn't worth it. It's better to use cutters. It's much easier, faster, and the result looks much better. I also rolled a small clay rope and made a little pretzel, and it turned out really cute. And this is what I got. I just left them all to dry. For the next ornament, I needed foil. My idea was to make a truck with a Christmas tree in the back. First, I made all the parts for my truck from foil and glued them together with a hot glue gun. Yes, I know my hot glue gun doesn't look perfect, but I'm a creative person, okay? It's okay, this one has been through a lot. And this is the truck I got. Remember it like this, it's only get worse from here. I started covering it with clay and I already knew that this ornament wouldn't work. It turned out very crooked and quite heavy. I tried to smooth it as much as I could with water and tools, but it didn't work. Let's see what happens when it dries. After 2 days of drying, we can finally look at the result. So the truck cracked a lot because I used too much water while working with it. And the cookies look good, they just bent a little. You need to press them with something while they are drying. I didn't know this before, but now you do. Next step was sanding. I took sandpaper and just sanded all the uneven spots and surfaces. It already looked much better. I sanded and sanded and sanded. Everything was covered in dust, but I think the result was worth it. Even the truck started to look better. Finally, it was time to paint. I took acrylic paints and chose my colors. I picked a simple color palette, green and red. And I just started painting. I used many ideas from Pinterest. I looked for inspiration and paint. Some ideas came straight from my head and some I painted directly from references. In general, I really love working with acrylic paints, so I enjoyed the process of making these ornaments and the result as well. Then I moved on the track. I painted it all in red. After, I used a sponge to make the edges stand out more. It also gave the track a bit of vintage look and it turned out really nice. And I also painted the window and the wheels in black. The rest of the ornaments I painted in real cookie colors. On the edges I made them look a bit more baked, also with sponge, and now they look just like real cookies. And this is what I got. I think they look super nice. They all turn out very different and very beautiful. I have this glossy varnish for clay. I took the first ornaments we painted with acrylic paints and covered them all with one coat of varnish. I also covered the pretzel with varnish and added some sesame seeds on top. Honestly, the truck looked fine when it was just painted red. First, I started adding details with a metallic marker. Then I glued the tree with a hot glue gun and also added real pine branches, and I think it doesn't look very good. For some reason, I also thought it was a good idea to glue Lego pieces as a headlights, and honestly, I'm not happy with the result at all. And now it was time for our cookies. My idea was to make these cookies look like they were covered with cream. So I took cake decorating tips. For the cream, I used this texture paste. It had a perfect consistency for what we need. I took a piping bag, took the tip and put the paste inside. I cut the tip, tested it a little to see how it worked and started adding it to the cookies. Honestly, it was quite hard. For some reason, it felt easier in my head. Here, as you can see, I decorated the cookie with bows, but later I will redo this one. By the way, as a reference, I used photos of real cookies. Here, as you can see, I already redid the cookie with bows into a simple cream-covered cookie. I also added a little acrylic paint to the paste and decorated a Christmas tree, a mitten and a round cookie. And here's the result after everything dried. They look absolutely beautiful. I'm in love with them. I think they look very cute on the tree. They are quite small, so maybe they are not the best for a big tree, but for a small tree they look amazing. I will definitely hang them on my Christmas tree. The truck turned out too heavy so it can stay under the tree, but I don't want to, I just will hide it. For the next ornaments I used cotton and PVA glue. I also used different objects to create the shapes. For the first one I wanted to make a hot air balloon, so I took the syrup cap and sanded it so the cotton and glue would stick better. Here is again my hot glue gun. I glued a toothpick and left it to dry for now. Here I will switch from one shape to another because while one was drying I started working on the next one. For the next ornament I decided to make a goose. I took my favorite foil and since I already had some experience with it I quickly made the goose shape. I also used toothpicks for the legs and fixed everything with hot glue. I glued the goose into a tennis ball because I wanted it to look like the goose was standing on a circus ball. For the next ornament I also used foil and it's gonna be a circus mouse. As you can see, the theme here is a circus. I made the shape, added a toothpick and glued everything with hot glue so it would hold well. Then I took some wire and made arms and legs for the mouse. I made small holes with a stick to push the wire through more easily because the wire is quite soft and made for crafts. After shaping the arms and legs, I fixed them with a hot glue so they wouldn't fall out of the mouse's body. The last step was to connect the basket to the styrofoam ball and all the bases were ready. Here is the mouse, the balloon and the goose. I mixed PVA glue with a little water and started making the ornaments. I wrapped them with cotton and then covered them with the glue mixture. And I just repeated this process until the whole shape was covered. These kinds of ornaments were very popular in the Soviet Union. People made a lot of them back then and now I see them often on the internet. They are becoming a trend and I see why. They look very cozy and of course I decided to try making them too. By the way, working with this material was quite hard. The cotton with glue kept sticking everywhere, to my fingers, to my brushes. Well, I managed it. And now I need to wrap it with thread as a first layer so the cotton holds better. Then I covered it again with a layer of glue and water so everything would hold better. Then I repeated the same steps with the mouse and our hot air balloon. I also wanted to say something that may be obvious, but the hardest one to work with was the hot air balloon. It has a big smooth surface and you need to make it as even as possible. With the mouse and the goose, small and even parts are more okay. It took about 2 days for everything to fully dry. Then I started doing the same steps again but without the thread. But this time I first covered the surface with glue, then added the cotton and covered it again with another layer of glue. And I also tried to smooth the surface with a brush. For the mouse I also made the ears from cotton. I cut 2 small ears, covered them with the glue and attached them to the mouse. I also hid the transition from the head to the ears with a bit of cotton. I think the mouse turned out really nice, and of course I didn't forget about the goose and the balloon. It took about 2 more days for everything to dry, and then I could start painting. I used acrylic paints again. I started painting the goose. I painted the ball red and added a bit of black to create like a vintage look, a little bit of dirty feeling, like it's really old ornament. And I added the eyes as a simple black dots. For the hot air balloon, I drew some stripes and started painting it red as well, adding a little black for the same vintage effect. When it dried a bit, I mixed some brown into white paint to get a dirty white color, and I used the same dirty white to paint the mouse. And I also painted the tail, arms, ears and nose in pink. And this is how I dried them, kind of funny. After the paint dried, I started decorating them. I started with a balloon. I took some strings and added hot glue along the lines I painted where the colors meet. I also added the strings horizontally to decorate it. Then I made small loops and played them at the knots so it looks like a real balloon tied with ropes. I also added red flags, and this is how the balloon turned out. For the goose, I just tied a ribbon around the neck like a scarf. For the mouse, I decided to make a clown ruff. I used small gift bags, cut them into stripes and tie them on a string. Big thanks to my husband for holding the string this whole time. Then I trimmed the extra parts, tied it around the mouse's neck, and I got a very cute clown detail. And here they are, all done. I think they look absolutely adorable and very cozy. They are far from perfect, they are not even at all, but that's exactly why I like them. They look really nice on the Christmas tree. You can make almost any shape you want in any size, and it's very cheap to make, so I definitely recommend it. For the next ornaments, I used wood slices. I drilled holes in the slices using a drill so I could add ribbon later. Then I painted all the slices in a white beige color for the background. The paint dried, our bases were ready. I took my favorite acrylic paints and started painting. By the way, for the background I also used acrylic paint, of course. So I looked for different references on Pinterest, painted some of them, added ideas from my head, and used these slices as small canvases. For this, I also used a toothbrush and tried to create a snow effect. I also decided to use acrylic markers that I once ordered from AliExpress. I thought it would be easier and faster to paint this way, but I really didn't like the result, so I just painted over it and continue using acrylic paints. I decided to do all the design on my slices in one style and one color palette, so they look like one set on the tree, not separated ornaments. And this is the result I got. They look very cozy and homey. They are very quick to make, so if you don't have much time, you can easily recreate them. You can paint different scenes and they look very natural and fit really well with a Christmas tree. For these ornaments, I used a velour fabric and beads. Again, from foil, I made the shape of a little mushroom, and as you can see, my cat really helping me. So I got a piece of this fabric and put it into an embroidery hoop. I bought a special needles for beads, so we're gonna use it. I took a thread, pushed the needle through, and started randomly choosing beads and sewing them into the fabric. It's gonna be little spots on our mushroom. I chose some colors that I wanted for my mushroom and that matched the fabric. Unfortunately, I didn't have red fabric. With red it would look amazing, I think, but with green it looks like a toxic mushroom, you know, but red with white spots also is toxic. Anyway, I cut the fabric to match the shape of our base, glue it so it wouldn't move, and trimmed it again. At this point I thought I cut off too much and it was even a bit upset, but in the end when I started gluing it with hot glue, everything worked out perfectly. It was exactly the right size, not more, not less. But please be careful, not like me. Next, I took the stipe of our mushroom, glued a ribbon to it and started wrapping everything with a ribbon. I wasn't trying to make it perfect. In some places I fixed it with glue so it would hold better. The main goal was to make sure the foil was not visible. It already looked great, but I decided to decorate it even more with a lace ribbon. I just added a small ruffle under the mushroom cap. Then I glued the stripe of the mushroom to the cap, but it still felt like something was missing, so I decided to add the same lace to the stripe as well. In the end, I added a small metal hook and a ribbon, and our little mushroom was done. For the next ornament, I drew a sketch to plan where the beads would go on the heart, so our ornament will be in the shape of a heart. I cut a heart shape from paper, drew it on the fabric, and roughly planned which bead colors I want to use following the sketch. Again, I took a needle and a thread, and I did the same as with the mushroom cap, but this time I wasn't sewing randomly. I followed the sketch so everything went in the right place. Working with long beads was interesting. I couldn't just place the needle wherever I want. I first placed the bead at the end of the thread, checked its direction, and only then pushed the needle through. And I'm finally done. This is how the back looks. When I finished, I tied a small knot and started cutting out our heart shape. I prepared a ribbon, a second heart shape, and started sewing everything together. And honestly, I hated this process. This was the first time when I was so angry while making an ornament. For some reason, my thread kept getting stuck in the fabric and I kept getting knots. I don't know, maybe the fabric was just not right. Then I left too small of an opening to turn the ornament inside out, and that was exhausting. And as you can see in the background, I forgot to sew on the ribbon. It was really sad that I spent so much time on this ornament. I really loved how the bead embroidery turned out, but the heart itself was awful. I filled it with cotton, closed the opening, and then decided to just attach a ribbon in a different color to make the mushroom from the back. And I left it like that. Together they don't look that bad, but of course I like the mushroom much more. I took the mushroom idea from Pinterest and the heart too. I'm not sure what else you can make with this fabric, so write in the comments if you have any ideas. I definitely recommend trying to make the mushroom. As for the heart, think twice if you really need it. For the next ornaments I used felt and beads. Felt usually feels like a very childish material to me, but when I searched for ideas on Pinterest, I was surprised by how many things you can make with it. I made paper heart templates and cut them from different colors. And this is gonna be a cookie. And as you can see, I really like cookies. So I took different beads and started sewing them on, and I realized that I really enjoy sewing beads, just like I did with the previous ornaments and also here on felt. But felt is very nice material to work with because it's quite firm and you have much more control compared to the fabric I used before. When all the beads were sewn on, I sewed a ribbon to the main part of our cookie. This time I didn't forget about the ribbon. Then I started sewing the colored part to our cookie using this kind of stitch. I don't really know the name of stitches, so just look at what you see on the screen. It's pretty simple one. So I just went through the cookie and the colored part from the back, then came out and put the needle only into the cookie part from the front to the back and so on. When I finished with it, I needed to sew two cookie parts together. So this stitch is similar to the one I just used, but when a small loop appears, I pass the thread through it, and this is how the stitch is made. Then I filled our ornament with cotton and finished sewing it with the same stitch. And this is the result. I also tried making the same cookie but with different color for the dough and the cream. I was curious how brown chocolate-like dough would look, and I think because of the contrast it looks even better. Then on Pinterest I saw a Christmas tree idea that I really liked, so I decided to recreate it. So basically I used the same steps, but this time I embroidered small stars with a thread, and everything else was exactly the same. In the end I sewed everything together, filled it with cotton, and the ornament was done. Next, I decided to make an ugly Christmas sweater. At first I thought about just sewing on different elements, but in the end I embroidered a pattern using moulinet threads. I still sewed on a little Christmas tree and other decorative elements, but I think together it looks really cool. And these are all the ornaments I made. I really enjoy making them. I will definitely make a few more for my Christmas tree. They look very cozy, and I think this is also a great idea for a personal Christmas gift. The next ornaments were made from polymer clay. It was my first time working with this clay, and in general in this video I worked with many materials for the first time, but with this one I struggled a lot. I really thought it would be much easier. First of all, the clay was really hard and I had to knead it for a long time. Second, when I tried to attach two elements using different methods I saw online, nothing worked for me. Here, using this snowman as an example, you can see that I couldn't attach the parts properly, so I just took a tool and joined them together, mixing it a bit. I knew I would cover everything with a scarf anyway. Here I was making the scarf, and for some reason this red color stained everything. My hands, my table, even the white part of the snowman got a little colored because of it, but overall it's not very noticeable. Then I added small details like a carrot nose. Then I used a tool to make small some kind of holes like the space for the eyes. I added small black eyes and buttons on the snowman's belly. After that I added a metal hook and made a small top hat from black clay, attaching it to the side. And our snowman was done. So I'm a huge fan of Stranger Things and I'm really sad that the show is ending, but at the same time I'm very excited. So I decided to make a small piece. It's not just an ornament, it's more like a memory of all the season I watched. By the way, here you can see how red my hands are because of this red clay. So you can see everything on the screen. It wasn't that hard to make. I made the shape of the demogorgon, added some black details and then just added the teeth. I also saw many different ideas inspired by Stranger Things, like egg waffles, a radio or old videotape. There are really a lot of ideas, but I wanted to make the demogorgon because it is the most recognizable one. It also appears a lot in the last season, so you could say it's almost like a main character, and of course it's much easier to make than a human face, for example Eleven or Steve. I also decided to make a gingerbread house. I cut the base for the house from brown clay. Then I started decorating it with different elements. I decorated the roof, made the door and added some candies. So I saw this idea on Pinterest and decided to recreate it and added some of my own details. And this is what I got. I baked everything in the oven following the instructions. After baking they had a matte finish and I decided to keep it like that. I only added varnish that I used before to the demogorgon because it's basically his open mouth, so it's supposed to look wet. And this is the result I got. Unfortunately the snowman scarf fell off, but overall they look so nice, especially I like demogorgon. They look very colorful on the Christmas tree, but they are quite small, so they might get lost on a big tree. But it's great that you can make almost anything with this material. I think I just need more practice because it was quite hard for me to work with it. And last but not least, these ornaments I decided to make from things I already had at home, very budget friendly. The first thing I started with was a paper ornament. I found all this idea on Pinterest and followed the instructions step by step, so you can also find all these tutorials on Pinterest. You can make so many things from paper, and I think if this paper is pretty, it looks really amazing. I also saw ornaments made from newspapers, and they look vintage and also very cool in their own way. This is the first star I made, and I decided to make a second star using a slightly different technique. And until this point I didn't really think about what this called, like what I'm doing. I thought it was origami, but origami means no scissors and no glue at all. Here I use quite a lot of glue, so this can be called paper craft. It is quite quick to make for such a cool result, so I definitely recommend it. And here is the second star. Next, I decided to use everything I had ever found on the street. Don't ask why I have sticks at home. I always knew they would be useful for some craft one day. So I decided to make another idea I saw, guess where? Of course on Pinterest. I made a small Christmas tree and a star. I glued everything together with hot glue. After that, I took red mulini threads and rubbed all the joints, both for better hold and for decoration. I think these two wooden ornaments have potential. They could be decorated more, but I didn't have the materials or ideas to do that. I also took a pine cone and painted it with a gold paint. This was the fastest ornament I made in this video. And for the final ornament, I took a walnut shell, attached a string to it and decorated the inside with pine branches. I also placed a small Christmas tree made from polymer clay inside. And here are the ornaments I made. They were very easy, very quick and almost free to make, and I think they look really cute. You can mix them with other ornaments we made, for example the painted wood slices, and I think you can get a very natural looking Christmas tree decorated with natural materials. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Which ornaments do you think turn out the best and the coolest? Which ones would you make for your own Christmas tree? I wish you all the very best. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year!